My dad used to breed, as I say, if you ever go to Hong Kong, if you go into the gardens and that in Hong Kong, you will see men with birds in cages, hanging them on trees, and they would take, like, it's like taking your dog for a walk, you take your bird out into the open. And my dad always loved birds, and as for a hobby, I suppose, he bred budgies and canaries in particular. And people knew, found out he was doing it, and they'd ask him if they could buy something off him, and so that used to go on even when the laundry was there. He would still be selling the odd bird to people, you know, if you got any budgie and want a blue budgie or whatever, you know, and he would find one for them. But then it became obvious after a while that the laundry business, a lot of them were closing around Liverpool anyway, because we had friends who also had laundries around Liverpool, and they were all sort of closing down. In fact, I think there was only the one in Penny Lane that carried on for any length of time afterwards. And he started selling more and more, and it got to a point, I think, where it was either he had to think of another sort of business or he had to go back to sea, because he needed money. He had a family to raise, you know. And my mum obviously didn't want him to go back to sea. I don't think he particularly wanted to go back to sea. So they decided on the pet shop. And originally it was just literally breeding budgies and canaries. They also bred dogs. They bred dogs and they bred chows and Pekingese. So there was those as well, but they didn't sell those. And people would just come in and buy them, and that was it. And it gradually just got bigger and bigger, and then he thought, well, perhaps we could try something else. So then we had we had rabbits and guinea pigs and hamsters and gerbils and things like that, and then snakes, and then tropical fish. That was a big thing. He went into tropical fish, that actually became quite a big business, because that, again, we used to actually send fish out to people as well. There was people would contact us for fish. So then he never did anything small, my dad. He always wanted, if he was going to go into business, it was going to be big. Hence the headed note paper, and we had pens and pencils with the names of the shop printed on them and everything. And obviously the laundry had been known as Lee's Laundry, and Lee is L-I. Our name is spelt L-I, but it was always spelt L-E-E, just for ease, because people couldn't pronounce it otherwise. And my eldest sister, we've all got Chinese names, but my eldest sister, Sue, she was Suhan, but Rose was her name, and they decided to name the shop after her because she was the eldest child, basically. So it became the Rosalie Pet Stores. And then the shop next door to us closed, so we bought that as well. So it was a double shop. So we had 350 to 352 Park Road was a double shop. So 350 was the pet food, and that was where we sold birdseed and dog biscuits and things like that. And the shop next door was where the animals were. That's where the birds, the fish and things, and small animals were. Then he branched out again. But in the same property, we would sell fishing tackle and fishing licenses. We would sell bedding out plants in the spring and summer. You know, so he was always trying to improve it. And of course, in those days, there was the import licenses, and that were quite easy to get. You can actually import stuff from all over the world. So he used to import tortoises directly from Morocco, and he would import minor birds directly from India, and they would come in as minor birds. They were known as gapers. They were just left their mothers, basically, and they needed feeding. So we would get a cage full of these things that would arrive at the airport. We'd go and pick them up. Obviously some of them had died on transport, but most of them would still be, and then we would have to hand feed them for the first couple of weeks of their lives until they could feed themselves. And we did that with puppy food, would you believe? Very small puppy food, melted in hot water and rolled up into balls, and literally they would literally open their mouths and you would just shove this food in. And we did that as children. We never thought anything about it. That's what we did. It was time to feed the miners, so we'd all go off and feed the minor birds. And then after school, when we would come home at night, you had two things. You either got behind the counter and served in the shop, or you started feeding and watering and cleaning out all the animals, so I always preferred to be in the shop serving people, so that's what I did. And they would start, the rest of them would start feeding and changing, cleaning all the bottom of the cages and everything like that out. And then when the shop closed at 6:30, I was a sous chef to my dad because my dad did the cooking, and I always wanted to be with my dad. I always wanted to watch what he was doing. So I probably cook the most Chinese food of all of them, because I learnt on the job, as it were, you know. So.
What did you do with the Pekingese puppies that you bred?
We would sell them through the kennel club. We were members of the kennel club, and we had our own kennel registration number, and they would be sold officially through the kennel club. They actually they stopped dealing with Pekingese quite early on because they're very difficult dogs. They're quite strange dogs, but they carried on breeding chows for a long time. Actually, they used to show chows, and right up. In fact, my sister in Brighton had a chow till not very long ago. When I married John, his family were cat people, so we've only ever had cats. I would love a dog. I would happily have a dog and a cat, but because I was brought up with animals all around me anyway, it never bothered me, whatever they were, you know. So, but yeah.
Anything else?
The station story.
Oh yeah, the station, taking the birds down.
Okay. As I say, my dad liked to do things big, so he would advertise and he would send out and he would get in touch with other pet things around the country. And because a lot of the birds he imported were birds that weren't readily available in Britain, with some beautiful birds used to come in from India and places like that. A lot of pet shops from other parts of the country would contact us, and private people that wanted a pair of something, what did we have? Zebra finches, Gouldian birds. They were beautiful. There were some really nice birds. And of course, the only way we didn't drive, we didn't have a car, so we couldn't take anything anywhere. So they had to go by transport. So it was train basically, and Land Street Station was the one to go to. So Rose and Anne, my two eldest sisters, originally started it, and then Rose left home when she was older. And so it was then me and Anne, my sister and I, and then later on my brother and I, we would go down to Lime Street Station with birds. And again, my dad, as he had the notepaper for the pet shop made, he had boxes. We imported boxes, flat pack boxes from Hong Kong. I don't know why he never thought to look at England, but because he knew Hong Kong, I suppose. And they would come over in big stacks, and we would build these boxes up. And then we would put the birds in, we had these little pots that had a hole where they could put their beak in and just get water so they didn't spill all over. And we would put seed on the bottom of the boxes. And we spent our lives checking times of trains to different places. And then we would get a taxi, and everything, they wouldn't let us go on the bus with them. We had to get a taxi there and a taxi back. So we got a taxi to Lime Street Station. We knew, the blokes in the parcel office knew us all. And it all had to be stamped. It was all official because it was livestock we were sending off. So we had to get them to sign it. Then we would come back in a taxi, give it to my dad, and that was it. So.